Now, please welcome our next speakers to the stage.
Good evening, Miami Beach. My name is Alex Heckler, and I have a hard time saying no, which is how I ended up as the chair of this small nonprofit host committee tasked with raising millions of dollars and signing every contract for this event. Now we are in just year two, one of the premier climate summits in the world. On behalf of the host committee, I want to express my deepest gratitude. First, thank you for coming. Last night, Bill Nye made a great observation. Our climate challenges will not be fixed through individual actions. We need massive action on a global scale. So I'm grateful that you have traveled from all over the country or the world to participate in this great conversation this week. Second, and it's especially important because it's International Women's Day, I want to recognize the two women in my life who are most responsible for putting this great show on. Their tireless behind-the-scenes work made this happen. They're the unsung heroes of the event, Michelle Berger from the city of Miami Beach and Veronica Pizzorni from LSN Partners. Thank you both for your work. I also want to recognize Mike Llorente, John Adrabi, and others on the host committee who've worked for the last 2 years and hopefully many more years in the future in making this event a reality. Third, we want to thank Dan Porterfield and the Aspen Institute, their amazing team, for cultivating and curating an incredible program that made this event a reality. And then I want to thank the civic and political leaders who attended and the business leaders. So this could be a conversation that makes change happen now, that makes policy change now, because that is the time to start this program now. We're here tonight to see my friend Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States. And she answered the call to lead this conversation tonight. She didn't come here to give a speech for you. She came here to continue an ongoing conversation about our climate challenges. A few weeks ago, she was in St. Cloud, Minnesota at the New Flyer factory to look at electric buses. She then went to Arizona to talk about clean energy. Then she went to Munich, where she spoke at length about this climate crisis. Days later, she was with the National Space Council talking about climate. And yesterday, she was in Colorado talking about water storage and electric buses. That's what real leadership looks like. I am honored to be here with real climate leaders from all around the world, including our next speaker, who is a real climate leader, and he's the former Colombian president, President Duque. He will discuss the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Thank you all for coming again, and enjoy this evening's program.
Everybody, how are we doing today? Beautiful audience, I'm absolutely delighted to be here with all of you. My name is Vanessa Ock. I am a journalist with Telemundo Network, and it is truly my pleasure to be here with former President of Colombia, el señor Duque. Iván Duque, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros, Presidente.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you all. It's a great honor for me to be in Aspen Climate Ideas and also in International Women's Day. My congratulations to all the women who are joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Bueno, pues we're going to talk about an issue that is so important not only for Colombia, but for the well-being of our whole planet, and this is the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon jungle is not only a source of food and water and medicine, but it's also key to maintaining the balance of our whole planet. It is key to clean energy, clean air, healthy water cycles, and is home to almost 10% of the biodiversity of the whole planet. The protection of the Amazon is very, very complex, and former President Ivan Duque has a very unique perspective because Colombia is home to 10% of the Amazon jungle. I know you have been always very, very passionate about environmental issues. So first of all, I would like you to explain us a bit why the Amazon jungle is so important, not only for Colombia and the region, but for all of us, for the whole planet.
Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. First of all, I would like to say that the Amazon is part of the most important and strategic biomes in the world. Maybe when we look at the Congo Basin and the Indonesian jungle, we're talking about 3 hotspots that are crucial for the world to be able to absorb carbon dioxide. So if we lose the Amazon, we will be very much in a major environmental disaster without any way back. And what's hurting is that in the last 4 decades, we have lost the equivalent of France and Germany together, or California and Texas together, when it comes to the Amazon due to deforestation. So we have to act, and this is not just a matter of the countries doing the work. I think the whole world needs to look at this kind of interventions as something strategical. And I have to say something. If the pattern of deforestation that the Amazon currently has continues, the Amazon will not be a container of carbon dioxide, but will be a net emitter in less than a decade. So we must act now.
And actually what you're saying is, it's very worrisome because there are some areas of the Amazon jungle that are already emitting more carbon than absorbing. Yesterday, a new report came out that projects that if Colombia keeps going the way that is going, in the next 2 decades, the country could lose at least 2.1 million hectares of forest. So that is the equivalent to the area of the country of El Salvador. So is this preventable, President?
So I think the most important challenge, Vanessa, and that's the challenge that we tried to face when I was in office, is that this trend has been occurring year over year over year in the last 40 years. And the first thing we acknowledged is that people don't see environmental crimes in the way they should. And when we looked deeply, we found out that most of the environmental crimes in Colombia did not have an imprisonment sentence. And when you're destroying the environment, you're basically also creating a crime against humanity.
Yes.
So we changed that criminal code in order to include imprisonment. We decided to include the protection of biodiversity as one of the cornerstones of the national security agenda. But we also committed ourselves to the campaign that was launched by Mark Benioff with the World Economic Forum in 2019 called 1 Trillion Trees. And we were able to plant 180 million trees within 3 years. And we put an end to the trend of increasing deforestation. We were able to reduce by 29%, considering that we had a pandemic on the trend, which was important, but we still have pretty much a long way to go. And the question is, how can we do it? Mm-hmm. And that's something that I've been working right now in a concept that I call market-driven, nature-based solutions, so that we can put an end to illegal mining, illegal cattle, livestock exploitation, illegal expansion of the agricultural border, and illegal crops. And the only way to do it is by creating sustainable income to the people in those rural communities, changing their ways of living to become conservers and preservers of the Amazon forest. So we started with 10,000 families. We launched the Leticia Pact with other 8 countries. But I think we are at the moment, if we are able to bring the resources from the international community on a market-driven basis to protect what is the most important biodiversity hotspot in the world. And if you allow me to share also this with the audience, when we look at the amount of water, fresh water, that the Amazon River discharges in 1 hour is the equivalent of all the fresh water that is consumed in a year by 8 billion people around the world.
And what you're proposing is a model that has been successful in Costa Rica. No? The government actually supports people for them to understand that it is more profitable to protect the forests that to cut it.
Yeah, but let me also make some comments about the things that worry. When I see yellow machinery that weighs tons in the middle of nowhere in the Amazon, the question is how they got there, who installed them, and they're destroying. So I'm trying to also call the producers of yellow machinery around the world to use AI technologies and identify with AI the machinery that is being put on environmental hotspots, and to try to use technology in order not to make it operable.
Yeah.
And that is something that, this is a discussion about ideas. I think we should. Thank you. And the other question that I want to raise is it's about illegal crops. People don't regularly know that in order to produce 1 hectare of coca, 3 hectares of tropical jungle are destroyed. People don't regularly know that to produce a kilo of cocaine, 12 gallons of gasoline have been used, and almost 2 pounds of cement. And that's basically what people are consuming. But all the chemicals are also diverted into the Amazon jungle or other jungles in Latin America. So if we're able to debrand cocaine in such a way that we also understand that this kind of drugs are also ecocidal, yes, I think we will have a different approach. And last but not least, which is also a discussion about ideas, is we have to demonstrate to the communities that they can have a better income by conserving and protecting, that by getting into illegal cattle, illegal wood production, or illegal expansion of the agricultural border. And that's where biodiversity credits can be a possibility if we have better accounting, more transparency, more traceability, but we combine the work of indigenous communities with the protection of hotspots in Latin America. So that's also a debate about ideas in which I'm involved right now.
Wonderful, wonderful, President. So, deforestation is a huge problem, and it is very, very, very complex to tackle. During your time as president from 2018 to 2022, Colombia lost more than 700,000 hectares of forest due to deforestation. And according to the Ministry of the Environment, in 2021, you lost 174,000 hectares of the Amazon jungle. This is an area equivalent to the city of Bogota. Would you say, President, that you were successful tackling deforestation?
Well, that's the thing. My environmental minister is somewhere here in the audience, Carlos Correa, and we worked so hard. And the first challenge we had is how can we define success? Because you had a rate of deforestation that was very high. In 2017, before I took office, we lost 214,000 hectares. So our main challenge was to stop the trend and then start the curbing down. So we said, let's define success with something that is measurable and traceable. And we said we have to reduce the trend by at least 30%, which would be the largest reduction on the trend in historical terms. 2020, we had a major reduction. 2021, we had a little spike. In 2019, we had a major reduction. And overall, we were able to reduce the trend by 29%. Do I feel happy about that? I don't feel happy about it. I think we achieved what we wanted to achieve in terms of proving that technically we can change the trend. But I also believe that the next thing that has to happen is that we don't see this as government policies. And I am worried that in the last 6 months, the military and the police, who were highly committed not only on law enforcing, but also participating on conservation, they're losing the enthusiasm and the and the timing that they were devoting to this. So I hope that the trend continues. There's going to be an Amazonic summit in the months to come. And I have to say this clearly. People don't know the size of the Amazonic biome. The Amazon biome can be as big as 80% of the United States of America. It has a very low density of law and order capacities. And you can monitor with satellite technologies, but it takes minutes to cut down trees in certain areas. So I think what we have to do rapidly is to create the market-driven, nature-based solutions and create a world fund, also with the contribution of our governments, so that we pay for the environmental service of conserving the Amazon. And one final thing that I have to say about this, the other thing that I really feel proud is that in order to conserve, you have to declare protected areas. When I assumed office, we had 14% of the Colombian territory declared protected area. We committed to be 30% by 2030. And with Minister Correa, we said we have to reduce our goal in terms of timing, and we were able to leave Colombia with 34% of the territory declared protected area in 2022. So I think that also is a major contribution for us.
Definitely. That's a wonderful achievement. Many people think that what drives deforestation is the coca plantations in Colombia. But studies have shown that the main driver of deforestation in the past 40 years has been precisely the cattle industry. How did you address this issue?
Well, let me say something about the deforestation overall. If negative land use and deforestation were a country, it would be the world's second largest emitter of greenhouse gases. And today is the second major source of emissions. And this is happening primarily in the global south.
Yes.
So this is not exclusive of the Amazon, it's happening also in some parts of Africa and some parts of South Asia. So we need to see this as a world effort. We committed in our climate action bill in Colombia to be zero deforestation by 2030. And you mentioned about the cattle industry. I wouldn't use the word industry because that expansion of deforestation is not happening by formal people involved in cattle production. What we said in Colombia at a certain point is we work with the industry for them to reduce the extensive land they use. And we said, let's try to reduce the area. Let's try to use rotation as a mechanism of productivity. But we also got them involved into something that I was questioned, saying I was too ambitious, but I said, we want to get a minimum to 100,000 hectares of silvopastures and demonstrating that this can be a way also to contain a lot of the emissions from that industry. And we got to 150,000 hectares, and the industry got involved, and they signed a zero deforestation agreement. Now, the informal, illegal cattle production is the one that is producing the highest damage in Brazil, in Colombia, in Peru, Ecuador, and part of Bolivia.
Yes.
And the only way that we can change that trend is to be able to create a payment for environmental services for those communities that sometimes are pushed by legal forces to get into that illegal cattle. That would guarantee a flow, a cash flow that would generate a living. But the other thing, if they conserve, they replant, they can also be eligible to participate in a compensation through carbon credits or through biodiversity credits with a much better accounting, because when you have deforestation and you're able to recover the land that you have lost, that is as clear accounting as clear can be.
Wonderful, wonderful. You have a very, very unique experience being the president of a country. Could you tell us, what do you think worked, what didn't work, what could you have done different today when you look back?
I rarely think about things that we could have done much better, but today, honestly, Vanessa, I am devoting much more time about the future, and especially about what the global South can do. And I think since this is also a debate about ideas, I think there are two major worries that I have that I think we can solve with two solutions. The first one has to do with the poorest countries in the world. We all have to take action in terms of climate change. For example, Colombia only represents 0.6% of the world emissions, but we are in the top 10 of the most affected countries by climate change. Well, let's talk about the Latin American Caribbean. That Caribbean zone is exposed to natural disasters. Yes. But they don't have today the fiscal capacity to do all their climate action investment. So the one thing that I suggest is that with the G20, with the IMF, with the World Bank, with the IDB, we can be able to have debt swaps in which we condonate part of the debt vis-a-vis the climate action that poor countries have to put before a priority in their cabinet work. And the second thing is related to middle-income countries. We have countries like Colombia, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, and we have to face the fact that after the pandemic, the levels of deficit spiked, the level of debt is spiked, and today in a cabinet discussion, you're having the debate of what goes to education, what goes to health, what goes to housing, what goes to infrastructure, and then what goes to climate. And you don't want to have that kind of challenge when we are committed to reduce by at least 45% our emissions by 2030 and be carbon neutral by 2050. So I have proposed that with the IMF, for the next 7 years, there is a set of fiscal investments on climate that will be counted below the line of the fiscal deficit calculations by the IMF, and that can generate the most impressive release of resources dedicated to climate action. So if those two things are met, I think we will definitely have a better experience.
That's much needed, much needed. Experts warn that parts of the Amazon, specifically 20% of the Amazon, is dangerously approaching a tipping point where parts of the jungle could become a dry savanna and could not sustain life anymore. What keeps you optimistic?
Well, we have to understand how climate works. And I remember when we had the fire seasons in 2019, unfortunately, it became political. It became an absurd debate of the left and the right with the fires. Mm-hmm. Because we all have to tackle the fires when they happen, but they don't happen just because it's something that came out of an unprecedented situation. When you have fires in Australia, due to the way climate moves and temperature moves, that means that you're going to have the fires later on in the Amazon, in the south, because the dry seasons move through to climate conditions from one hemisphere to the other. And when people say, why are you not doing anything about the fires? When you look at the Amazonic biome, as I said, it's like 80% of the United States. And so you have a fire in Florida, you have a fire in Boston, you have a fire in Wyoming, you have one in Nebraska, one in New Mexico, and the capacity, institutional capacity to mobilize the force or the firefighters to put an end to those fires is basically none. Because once you get to the point, you don't have a place to recharge your helicopters with fuel. You don't have the capacity to mobilize great amounts of water. So you have to do a lot of prevention, and that prevention becomes the most important priority, and that prevention starts with nature-based solutions. So we have to recover, we have to replant, we have to conserve, and to replant that forest takes 2 to 3 to 4 years, and you have the communities there who have to have a living that is sustainable for them by protecting. And that requires a major investment, and that's why what we're proposing nowadays with that climate nature-based solution or market-driven nature-based solution is that we pay to conserve and to protect. And why this involves the whole world is because without the Amazon, there's not going to be any target met by 2030 nor by 2050. Protecting the Amazon is not just a Latin American priority, it's a world priority, and we have to make available the massive mobilization of capital that this requires.
President Iván Duque, what a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you all, and thank you for this amazing event.
Thank you.
Following the Vice President's